how to best determine the true value of a property. What is the major difference between appraisals, CMAs, tax valuations, land court assessments, and so on and so forth. Stay tuned. Don't forget to watch until the end of the video where we have some useful notes. And if you liked us, like our video, leave us some comments, and also subscribe to our channel. Hey everybody, this is Jarek with Team YVR at Remax Crest Realty and Pauline Tonkin with Blue Tree Mortgages. We were just talking about all the different types of values that are thrown out there. You said you had a really good question for me.
I do. So I get asked all the time from people, how do we determine the value of our property? And I know from a financing perspective how we have to do that, but how do you determine the true value of a property?
So as the audience can confirm, we've heard a lot of interesting value conversations over the years in the media and also in your BC assessment and that realtors are sending out to you for your home. And essentially, in our world, we deal with appraisal values, we deal with BC assessment, tax valuations, we deal with realtor comparative market analyses, and then there's listing prices and selling prices, and oftentimes those numbers are very different. And so essentially, the BC assessment is, the purpose of BC assessment, which is a very separate body of sort of the government, the provincial entities, is to tax you, to find out what your tax assessment is based on your consumptions in your area, how many parks there are, and various different formulas that they have to evaluate and sort of tax assess your property. It's very different from what an appraisal is, which is, in your world, largely a justification of a mortgage that's being sort of justified by a third party to the bank. And a CMA, or a comparative market analysis, is a realtor doing sort of the next best thing that they can to an appraisal based on what, according to their experience and the data that we have in Paragon and the MLS database, are the most similar properties to yours. In the event that there are not a lot of similarities, we are in some suburban areas where there are not a lot of similar homes to each other, that is a little bit different. And so oftentimes we find that there is then an even stranger spread between what we list a property at and what it ultimately ends up selling for. And so very often you have this sort of pyramid of, okay, I estimated the assessment value, we see the assessment value, we've got a CMA, and then there is a list price based on sort of what we conservatively are marketing the property at to attract buyers, which is just a marketing really intent or marketing ploy, so to speak, or an initiation of a conversation. And then the selling price oftentimes is a whole other number based on what the market is bearing. Over the last few years, we've seen a tremendous spread between the list price and the sale price, and an even bigger spread between the tax valuation and the sale price. But interestingly enough, my question for you is, have you seen some dramatic differences between what would be an appraisal value and what ultimately a property is sold for versus like the tax assessment or the realtor's CMA?
Yeah.
Have you had any interesting experiences with this?
Absolutely. As we've seen prices come up over the last few years, we've seen a big spread between what the BC assessment is and what the selling price is. So from a financing perspective, the lender's always looking at the risk. So to keep on top of that moving market is a bit of a challenge. They really do rely on the appraised value. If the appraised value comes in lower than the selling price, what it was sold for, the client has to make up the difference in cash for that amount. So, and on the flip side, if I recently had a client that we were refinancing their property and we estimated the value based on what sales had been in their building, which had been some time earlier, there was a bit of a gap in time. And the appraisal, of course, is based on comparables in the area, comparable properties. Well, there was a difference of $120,000 between what we thought the property was worth and what the appraised value came in at. So from the lender's perspective, they were refinancing on a lower value in their mind than what the property was actually worth. So it was great. But that doesn't always happen that way. So we really do have to rely on the market value, what's happening in the market, and the appraiser has to determine that or justify it, evaluate it, and then we're using that information for the lending decision itself. Yeah.
Ultimately, I think you would agree that it really depends on what our intentions are in terms of determining the true value, like to call it the true value of the property. If our intentions are to get a glimpse of the property's current value, then a CMA and the tax assessment and maybe a third-party LandCore evaluation, LandCore analysis would be really great 3 data sets to look at. But if your intention is to see how much the banks think it's worth, they're going to get an opinion from realtors, but ultimately they're going to send an appraisal to the property. And again, that is for the purpose of you getting some financing. And oftentimes I've seen accepted offers and appraisal values be almost identical to each other because they are justifying that contract.
That's pretty common, yeah.
But if you are curious about your appraisal value before you even list, you may request that Pauline order an appraisal for your property, and it may differ from my CMA. I've seen appraisals draw on data that I thought are beyond the scope of what I think is comparable in a certain neighborhood or in a certain building. But according to their institutes and their guidelines, it is appropriate based on the sort of sales that they've seen. And so it's a good conversation to have, and there's a lot of data out there. Do you have anything to add before we wrap this up?
I think that's pretty good.
Okay, thanks a lot, everybody. Once again, Jarek Krasinski with Team YVR at Remax Crest Realty, and Pauline Tonkin with Blue Tree Mortgages. Talk to you soon.
Yeah, reverse mortgage. Yeah.
Okay.
Don't use the word reverse mortgage. If he uses the word reverse mortgage, we will be stopping.
Reverse.
No roll camera, we will stop.
Pauline's going to do the time.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to cut
Jarek.
only because they will hit that, they will skip right away. It's a negative.
Yeah, it's negative reverse connotation.